For this video, I wanted to take a closer look at how I made paint a solar system for Ludum Dare 45. The theme was to start with nothing, so of course we have to create everything. So we have a bunch of particles being created here, and I just created a bunch of them. It does make the game lag a little bit. It's not optimized at all. It's a game jam. It only had a couple days. And even at that, I didn't spend all 3 of the days I had on it. Had to work in between them. That's alright, because we did come out with something at the end. So what we have here is it lerps toward the mouse position. The further away it is, it'll move faster. As it gets closer to the mouse, it gets slower. And we see then when we grab enough of these star matter out here, I call them stardust, it has the planets come in. This is where the game completely changes. We can now click on a planet, and it brings up this whole drawing menu. So we could pick on the pencil here, and we have our cursor. The cursor is black and then white. White being the inner color of the circle. That tells us which one we're drawing with. If we try right now, we don't see anything because the inner color is the same as the background. Now, when we draw, we're able to paint like this. And this is achieved by making a bunch of objects on the screen in front of one another. I didn't care about Z fighting for these objects because they're all the same color. So for instance, if I color over these, we're good there. We can hold down on plus to make this bigger, and it just makes the scale of the objects we're drawing with bigger. There we are. And we'll do orange. Maybe we'll do something like this. Because then we can press the screenshot button. When we press the screenshot button, it takes a picture and adds it to the computer's folder. I'll find that in a moment. But we see here, it does put it on the planet. And the orange dots are pretty small in there. We do see a little bit. Let's change it a bit. Let's make it so that we can really see this. And you might also see the eraser down there and the page. The page clears the entire thing because these objects are being added in as a list. And the eraser here just erases the ones that were over. So it's not a perfect eraser because it's only erasing based on when we get inside of the collision for the inside of these. And it's only erasing the ones that we drag through. So see how the ones that were not inside of it's not erasing? So it's a decent eraser, but not perfect. But let's say we make this really big. I don't believe I capped the size you're allowed to make it. So we get that fall really quickly. And let's just make it so that way this is blue and green, kind of like Earth. Do something like that, just two-tone. Push the screenshot, and there it's all blue. We'll check this one. Let's add some green in there. We'll add some yellow. Let's screenshot. And there it is. This one may be rotating in a way that doesn't make it so we can see the other color. For instance, maybe it's all on the left side over here. So if I made that two-toned, there it is. It's just split in a weird way. But this one we definitely see it. So we're able to paint on all of these. And the new page, of course, clears it. These colors all change. We have black, we have white, we have green, blue, yellow, and orange. Just like that. And we can paint on all 4 of the planets. And like I said, it adds a screenshot to our folder. And nothing really happens after this point. It just allows you to paint around on different planets and see how they look at the end. Let's take a look at the folder here to see where it's adding these screenshots. And we see here we have a bunch of images. So what it does is it takes the image that was first added. We have this blue blob here, and it gives it the number 0. The next one that gets added, it puts green. Well, it doesn't put green. It just adds 2 to it. And it adds 1, and then it goes to 3, and adds 1, goes to 4. Now let's take a look at how this is achieved. So we have a bunch of functions here for drawing. If we take a look at the particle spawner script, this is how I made all of the particles at the beginning. So all it does is start a coroutine, tells it how many times things are spawning. So when you press the C button, or pressing C, you can actually spawn in more. When the game starts, the coroutine is started automatically to create a bunch of these. And we see here, when we start the coroutine, it turns off the UI, which is the title screen here. And then it goes to start spawning them. And we see as long as spawns is greater than 0, which when we set it to 1 by pressing C, we're only spawning 1 because we're subtracting 1. It starts the coroutine as long as it's greater than 0. So as long as it still has spawns, it'll keep doing it. So it's a bit of recursion with a exit condition. And we see all that spawn does is wait a certain amount of time, make a for loop of particles, which the number of particles here I believe I set to 15 or something like that. And we're just creating a bunch of them at this location, and we don't care about the rotation because all of these particles, if I go into the sprites, they are all just this faded circle, just like that. And the faded circle is just from Photoshop. And then it just sets the time between spawns to be a random number between the maximum and minimum, decreases spawns as we talked about before, and we have a separate function for turning off the UI. The particles themselves, they kind of cheat a little bit for getting attracted to the mouse cursor, because when we hit play here and we create, there is a collision around this box, this circle here. So there's the actual collision where they get destroyed, and then there's the larger collision which pulls them in. We see the blue one doing that right now. And kind of cheated with that. Instead of making it so that way it actually gravitates toward us properly, all I'm doing is adding to its velocity in the direction of that ball. So we're just moving toward it. Following the mouse, this is for the initial ball that we have for the sun object, as I called it, to be following to pick up the stardust. So as long as we're holding down the left mouse button, button 0, it is getting a point from the camera, screen to world point of that position, and it's setting the velocity to a point with, this is using lerping, because it's the point minus the position times speed at delta time. So the further away it is, the quicker it's going to move. And it's not quite exactly lerping, but it's very similar because we're taking a point, we're subtracting another point. So depending on how far away it is, this number is going to be larger or smaller. So the larger the number is, or the further the point is from where the object is, the faster it'll move. The sun itself, this is how it pulls things in. It has a scale that increases every single time another object. That is done inside of onTriggerEnter when it enters Stardust. And we see that it's just following the mouse, and it has the velocity set to 0 at the beginning. If it is greater than a certain size, that's when I force it to go into the center of the screen and make it so that we cannot control it with the mouse. So that way, that's what makes the star go into the center and also triggers all the planets to come in, which is right here. We have the planets, we're setting them all active, and we're turning off the collider for the sun in case we wanted to create more stardust by pressing the C key. And then the next part is we have the screenshot function. This is where we're actually taking screenshots. I might have removed this from the game, but this functionality is very similar. Paint system, paint over object, true. This actually is not taking a screenshot, is applying the screenshot's picture to that object. So this was for when we press the button for screenshot, because I needed this to be on the object to act as a button. So when we use the attach on the planets, we can go down to the attach for the planet right here. It's starting a coroutine to place the screenshot on the planet index. And we see screenshot here, planet index. It is turning off the paint system. And then it is waiting a certain amount of time, which it looks like the end of the frame, because we want to take pictures when everything is done updating. Then we're just using screen capture to capture screenshot as a texture. And we're setting that equal to a texture value. This is a temporary variable to hold on to it. And then we're using the planet's planet number based on the function to tell it, set the renderer's material, main texture, to that texture. That's how it's actually being applied. Then we turn off the paint and we delete all the dots. And there's a simple quit function. And it looks like we don't have the other script for the dots open. Dots. Dots are very simple. If the paint mode is erased and you click on it, destroy it. Very simple. And let's see, we have follow mouse, increase. So the paint system is very simple. Screen to world point again, except for now we have a paint cursor in 3 dimensions. And I'm going to not maximize on play to show you how this works. We're going to hit create. When we create that, we're going to just drag this object into the middle. We're going to cheat by just pressing C to create more stardust until we win. Just like that. And we saw that it did lag for a moment there. So when I click on a planet, what happens is, let's go to the side here. All of that original stardust is still there. It's just behind this object. So this paint canvas is placed slightly in front of it. The negative 0.5. That means it's 0.5 closer to the camera than anything else. And we see here, these buttons are even closer to make sure that it's not overlapping. So then when we draw on here, let's say I pick the pencil and red, and I draw on here, we see that that one is even at 0.6. So that is slightly in front of the canvas. And we see the buttons here are, the buttons are all under UI. And the UI is not under anything. But yeah, all of these objects are placed. Yeah, there it is, -1. So that way if we paint behind the buttons. And you can kind of paint underneath them if you want. Because when it does take a screenshot, it hides all of these buttons. That's why they don't show up on there. Which is under the planets part here. Turn off is turning off the canvas. The paint system is turned off right there. Paint canvas right there. So it's basically just using a lot of the Z axis for making sure it's closer or further away from the planets or the screen to make sure that nothing is behind what it shouldn't be. So we're just hiding everything behind this big square. And this big square comes up when we press it. And if you hold it too early when it starts, it does shoot off because the distance is not calculated properly, which is fine. Because in the actual game, it would start up and not have that play and then be able to hold down on it. So you see that the square gets bigger. And then when we delete it, it just goes away with the same second that we use the screenshot. So yeah, just really simple for some neat effects. Because when I started, I didn't know how we could set a texture to something, let alone making a Microsoft Paint-esque painting system. But here we are. By the end of the 3 days, we had something where we can actually create something from nothing.